Morning, all. All right, so we have 4 games tonight in the National Hockey League, and 2 early ones, 2 late ones, and we're a little over halfway through the first round. Realized that last night. It was like, well, game fours, and we don't go to game eight, so we're over halfway through, and these are game fours tonight as well. We'll see which of these series end up going longer and which ones end up being shorter series. So when we look at these ones, the leaders in 3 of the 4 are the teams that started the playoffs with the home ice advantage to begin with. Will they keep it? So that's the question mark going into tonight's games. Now, New Jersey's looking to get that home ice advantage back. They have to win in New York tonight. That game starts at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. For the New Jersey Devils, you look at the goaltending numbers. Schmid's numbers were fantastic. 972 in his appearance, and it is the single appearance, so it's a small sample size, but it's a playoff sample size, right? Vanacek, 827 is the save percentage there. On the Rangers side, Shesterkin, 950 save percentage. His numbers are insane, so New Jersey's going to need great goaltending, and they're going to need to, keep the chances a little bit lower than they're used to and try to win one. I would think 2-1, 3-1, somewhere in that range. So should be a fun one there. Although the game I'm most looking forward to tonight, and let's be honest, most of us are, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, it's Toronto and Tampa. So on one side you have Toronto fans who are going to be really, really hoping that Toronto goes up 3-1, because that's a rarity. Being up 2-1 is not. Being up 2-1 is a normalcy within Toronto circles. And in the past, I've expected them to hold leads in series against teams like Boston and Tampa. I expected it didn't happen. I didn't think that Montreal would come back either. So, definition of insanity right here. And it's because Toronto has a good team, and they have a team that should at least be good enough to win a round at some point. And so tonight's game, I think, will go a long way to solidifying that confidence and belief in themselves, or it could be the start of another fall out of the first round. So, in this 2-1 lead, Samsonov has been better. 878 is the overall save percentage for him, but he has been better after that one really iffy game there. Wall, 800 save percentage. And on the Tampa Bay side of things, Vasilevsky, an 853, which seems very low. In fact, I wrote 863 and had to change it to 853 because my brain couldn't compute a number that low for Andrei Vasilevsky. And let's be honest, while that number is that low, you have to capitalize on it because you don't know how long it's going to last. Vasilevsky last year against Toronto had a really rough first, I think it was the first 5 games, his numbers weren't very good. And then game 6 and 7, he just became playoff Vasilevsky, and then they rode that all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So Tampa Bay, Point is likely to play tonight. And again, it is that time of year where they won't really 100% tell us whether or not players are going to play, but Point's being seen as likely, which does not mean Point's 100%. It doesn't mean he'll play a regular shift. Maybe he only plays 12 minutes tonight. They're really playing this one close to the vest. But the storyline coming out of this one is Sheldon Keefe basically saying that Tampa Bay manipulating officials. And this is not something that's new. This is not something that's new at all. We all remember, well, those of us who are old enough, remember the speech by Brian Burke at one point about how Sedin isn't Swedish for punch me in the head, or however he put it. And he kind of went off about the way that the officiating had been, and that the Sedin twins were getting, a lot of cross-checks and a lot of, and they were. And Burke said at the time, or afterwards, he said that he did that knowing that that would probably help him get calls here and there in the next game. This is nothing new. The idea that, and this is why you'll see, like, they'll come back from commercial and you'll see a referee talking to a coach, and they're chatting back and forth, and the coaches, and you'll see the referee nodding along, whatever, and maybe they get that next call. So it is part of this whole officiating discussion we have every single year around every single game. I do my best not to get into all of the controversies around it because it would be every single recap. Basically, this fan base is mad about this call. This fan base is mad about this call. The reality being that usually after any given game, both fan bases aren't happy, as was the case last night with Dallas and Minnesota. Both fan bases, I thought, had valid reasons to be critical of how things were or weren't called. And so that has been a conversation for as long as I've watched hockey. The difference, of course, being now we have social media that amplifies all of it. Everybody's watching these games now. That wasn't the case 30 years ago, where you might just be watching the playoff games for the teams you cheered for. You didn't really care about all the rest of it. It wasn't on, 24/7 news cycles. And so it really amplifies this discussion. I haven't really noticed much of a change in the officiating in the playoffs over the regular season. But again, because there are many more eyeballs that are watching, as the view counts on my recaps in the playoffs would show, they skyrocket. Everybody's watching these games. It will amplify those voices of the critical. And there really isn't much that I personally could do, and there's not much that people can do unless those in charge decide to make some sort of a change. I have advocated before. I think it would make sense to have somebody who has a view over the entire ice surface, who has the ability to somehow communicate that there should be a call or rescind one as well and say, actually, this is what happened. And the trick is this. You have to find a way to do that without slowing the game down to a crawl, where almost every play could potentially be reviewable, right? So this idea that Tampa Bay is manipulating officials, I don't doubt that on some level that takes place. I don't doubt that on some level, by stating this, Sheldon Keefe's looking for a call or two tonight as well. And this is just, it's part of how things work with the National Hockey League. It's part of how the National Hockey League has always worked. And controversial goals go back as far as Bob Nystrom back in 1980, I do believe. Wasn't that an offside goal? So at any rate, this is not anything new to the National Hockey League. Yes, I do think that there are things that could be done to address it, but at some point in time, I just decided, I'll report on what happened in the game. I will talk about the odd calls here and there, but I'm not getting into the weeds of, which referees need to be fired and all that, because it gets kind of silly at that point. And I'm not saying that the points people are making aren't silly, but then it turns into this whole other thing, and it just becomes, yeah. At any rate, that makes that game very fascinating to me. That's another reason to look at Toronto and Tampa and say that could be the game of the night. All right, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. We have the Vegas Golden Knights and the Winnipeg Jets. This is do or die time for Winnipeg and their whiteout. I think if Winnipeg doesn't win a home game during this whole whiteout thing, I don't know, maybe change the whiteout up, because it feels like they don't perform very well at home in the playoffs. This dates back to 2019 or 20? I know in 2019 they didn't win a single game at home with the whiteout. So, yeah. It might be time to, I don't know, maybe change things up a little bit. Something. But at any rate, Vegas leads this series 2-1. Brossoit is sporting an .897 save percentage, which is below .900. But Hellebuck's .894 is kind of surprising. That being said, it's not entirely surprising considering how Vegas has a solid, underrated offensive team. And for Winnipeg fans, Ehlers not at morning skate. Doesn't mean he's not going to play, but it's highly likely he doesn't. I say it doesn't mean he's not going to play because just a few days ago that Ullmark wasn't at the morning skate for Boston, and they had an emergency call-up, and then Ullmark played anyways. So it was more of a precautionary thing, and Ullmark ends up playing anyways. 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific start between Colorado and Seattle. Colorado leading this series 2-1. Georgiev, an .898 save percentage for him. I don't think Georgiev's been fantastic. Grubauer, I think, has kind of outdueled him. Grubauer with the .917 save percentage so far, but Colorado's ahead. And tonight is maybe the biggest game in the short history of the Seattle Kraken. If they can tie this series and force at least a Game 6 at home, that to me is a win. Honestly, that's a win. If they get a Game 6 at home, they get 3 home dates in the first round in their first ever playoffs. That's a win. Even if they lost that Game 6 at home, it really would give the fans a chance to send them off, and all the applause and adulation they'd get and the standing ovations. I just think it'd be great. So at any rate, we'll see how that one goes tonight. Of course, if they knocked out Colorado, but I don't think that's going to happen. All right, now getting into the news of the day side of things, Matthew Tkachuk has been fined for a cross-check on Garnet Hathaway last night, which has led to everybody agreeing that was the right call. Nope. So much like the officials discussion, the Department of Player Safety, which is definitely attached to the officials discussion, gets brought up all the time. And again, I don't like to just have everything repeating all the time on the channel, so I just stay out of it for the most part. Do I think there's more incidents that should be suspendable or at least fined? Yes. Do I expect that to change? Not really. And it's one of those things that, like this fine here on Hathaway. My first thought was there seemed to be other things that were kind of over the line in that game last night too, and so we'll see how rough Game 4 is between these teams or Game 5 is between these teams because Florida's fighting for their lives. It's in Boston. It could absolutely escalate early, where Florida's really doing their best to knock Boston off their game. What better way than to knock over a player in the corner, give a goalie a couple extra taps when they make a save, that kind of thing. So that should be an interesting game on Wednesday. And speaking of Boston, Bergeron is seen as likely to play in Game 5. That would be huge for Boston. So last night, while waiting for the 3 stars to populate on my app, I put Zaka in the 3 stars because I think either Zaka or Coyle had to be recognized for the fact these guys are playing top 2 center minutes and are playing against some of the best members of the Panthers in Florida, and they're holding their own. And I thought that, for Boston, going into Game 3 when they didn't have Krejci or Bergeron, my first thought was, well, this could turn ugly. If Florida wins Game 3, all bets are off. Like, this could absolutely turn against Boston, and instead, Boston wins both games in Florida, and they come home in charge. They have 3 chances to win that first-round setup. They may very well do it in their first try. So I really thought that they did a good job, and now if Bergeron's coming back, that may very well be an opportunity missed for Florida, where Boston starts getting stronger. And then you can put Marchand, Hall, and Bergeron together, and then you can have almost the check line together. But, you can play Zaka in the middle if you want to do it that way. But at any rate, it just makes Boston more dangerous in Game 5. Announcement this morning, too, that Justin Braun has retired. Philadelphia Flyer member, so I'm wearing Flyers gear in honor of Justin Braun's career. Played a total of 842 games with San Jose, with the Flyers and the Rangers as well, right? 34 goals, 165 assists, 199 points. Always has to be kind of a downer on some level for a player when you retire and you're that close to a milestone. But for Braun, good, solid defensive defenseman. And so wishing him all the best in his retirement. 13 years in the NHL. And considering where he was drafted, that's kind of fantastic. He was a late draft pick. So when you see a guy who's drafted that late play over 800 games in his career, that says a lot about their willingness to work to make it to the NHL, because they don't hand you anything when you're a 7th-round draft pick. Woodcroft is saying out loud that he's undecided on a Game 5 starter after last night's game. And, I understand why he'd be undecided. So Skinner has played well for the most part. Last night was a rough go for him. I don't know how many of those I would put on him from that first period, issue they had with the Kings where they were down by 3. But at the same time, can you not go with Campbell after he saves 27 out of 28 in relief? When Campbell goes in there and basically saves your season, how can you not go with Campbell? And considering the amount of money he's getting paid, you should be able to go with Campbell. I think it'll be Campbell for the next game, but that remains to be seen. Good news for Stars fans. Joe Pavelski out this morning skating. He's skating with the healthy scratches, so he's skating with guys who haven't been playing, and the good news is that means he's skating, right? So he's in concussion protocol, and so if he's skating around, he must be close to a return. There's the possibility he'll return for the next game, which is in Dallas, and of course it's a 2-2 series tie. They desperately need that 5th game. That's probably Dallas's season right there. So, yeah, I think if Pavelski can play, he'll play, and that would make a big difference to Dallas's attack. Who better at tapping those goals into the net than Pavelski? So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.